So I've been in Chicago this week on business for my actual work, my day job, so I haven't been able to pay as close attention as I'd like to what's going on around the league over the last few days. Of course, I did see that Tibbs got fired, which is a whole topic in and of itself, and I'll probably reserve that for my second channel, the NBA channel. And while news around the Bulls seems to have been fairly quiet, we did get some rumblings, some rumors, reports that the Bulls are unlikely to keep both Josh Giddey and Coby White. And while I know there have been a lot of knee-jerk reactions to this, I had some people DM me saying, can you believe this? Why would the Bulls do that, especially after what we saw in terms of the success from this duo post-All-Star break? Well, it actually isn't that surprising at all, and I'll explain why in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I'll start first by saying this report, and I don't even know if I would call it a report, but this rumor came out from a couple anonymous rival team personnel, so that could be members of other teams' front offices, training staff, coaching staff, whatever, but regardless, it's coming from other teams that they've listed as anonymous sources. So take that for what you will. I never trust anonymous sources because I'm always a pretty skeptical person and wonder if the media outlet that came forward with this information is simply making it up to get a few headlines, a few clicks, and then there's obviously no accountability if someone tries to fact check them because the sources are anonymous. But let's say for a moment the report is real and that the Bulls are looking at options, taking calls, and making it known that they're looking to move on from Coby White or Josh Giddey. While I don't necessarily agree with it, and I'll explain why I don't agree with it, but regardless, it shouldn't come as much of a surprise because you have to remember the Bulls have to make a decision. It's going to be huge financial ramifications of a decision. They have to decide, are Giddey and Coby the backcourt of the future for this team? Can they win? Can they make deep runs with these two as their starting backcourt while they figure out the rest of the roster? Are these their guys? Because in order to keep both of them, you're going to have to commit a significant amount of money on your payroll to these two players alone. Giddey is reportedly looking for $30 million a year. Then there's been also talk about him willing to take something in the 5 years, $125 million range, which would be $25 million annually, which is great. It's good value for his production, but he's going to cost a lot of money. And that's going to start next season. And then with Coby White, I mean, he's on a bargain deal currently, 3 years, $33 million. He's going into the final year of his contract. He's going to make $12.8 million next season. He's extension eligible, but he's most certainly going to opt to test free agency in 2026 to get more money, as the Bulls can only offer him so much in the form of an extension relative to his current salary. And if Coby maintains his level of play that we've seen from the last 2 seasons, especially towards the end of the year where he was playing like an all-star, he's going to command something in a similar range of Josh Giddey of $30 million a year. And if the Bulls want to retain him and Giddey, your backcourt, your starting backcourt is now going to cost you $60 million a year annually, and potentially even more, because we don't know if the Bulls will overpay for Giddey. We don't know if Coby has an even better year than last season. He gets named an all-star and the Bulls have to pay him closer to $35 million a year annually to retain him. But regardless, it's going to be a hefty bill to keep both of these guys on your roster long term. Now, I want to be clear. The Bulls can do it. They'll have the cap space to be able to retain both of these guys with all the contracts coming off their books in 2026. But going back to the question, do you believe this is their starting backcourt for the future that is going to bring them to contention? And if the answer is no, which I believe is likely the case, then no, it should not be a surprise that the Bulls are unlikely to keep both of these guys. Now, I'm not saying it can't work. I do think that with the right pieces around these guys, namely strong defensive-minded players, players that can play fast, play well off the ball, if you can get a rim-running, lob threat type big, then yeah, it's possible you can have a really strong playoff-level team, a fun and exciting team. But it is a risk to commit that much money between Josh Giddey and Coby White. Both great players, but flawed players for the long term. Because you don't want to run into a situation where you're now cap-strapped once again for a mediocre team like the Bulls saw over the last 3 years with the DeMar and LaVine pairing. If it doesn't work out, it can set your franchise back for years. Now, I should be clear, in my view, when it comes to this notion that the Bulls are unlikely to keep both Giddey and Coby, Giddey is not going to be the one on the move. Like, the only way that happens is if the Nets, the only team with cap space this summer, offers him a max contract and the Bulls are like, yeah, we're not willing to match a max contract for Giddey, and they let him walk. And that's the only way Giddey isn't coming back. They're keeping Josh Giddey. It's Coby that would be on the move, because the Bulls sought out Josh Giddey as their point guard for the future in that Caruso trade. They traded their most valuable asset to get him, and yes, we can quibble about how they should have gotten more for him in that deal, especially after what we're seeing from Caruso in the playoffs this year, but Giddey is their guy. He's younger at age 22, played some of the best basketball of his career after the Zach LaVine trade. He's not going anywhere. It would be Coby that would be on the move, especially with his impending free agency in 2026, because what you also don't want is to have Coby walk in the summer of 26 and get nothing in return, or minimum return in the form of a sign and trade. Now, for me personally, I still think they should at least let this season start out with Coby and Josh in the backcourt and see if they can replicate what we saw towards the end of last year. Because while everyone likes to downplay that it was March and April basketball, and March and April basketball means nothing, well, this is an opportunity to prove to those doubters that what they were doing was for real and that there is legitimate potential there, because the Bulls don't have to trade Coby this summer. In fact, I would argue they shouldn't, unless they get some insane haul for him from a team that is willing to overpay to get him. But outside of that, they should keep him. Let the first few months of the season play out, see how things look between him and Giddey, and if it's looking like this is a strong, viable backcourt, then great. You now have a larger sample size, a strong use case for why it makes sense to pay these guys a combined over $60 million a year. Like, the Bulls have nothing to lose to really keep both of them together for the start of the season, to get a bigger litmus test to see what pieces work and which don't. And if the answer is still no, come trade deadline, that Coby and Giddey are going to be a duo that you can contend with, then you trade Coby before the deadline as a very tradable expiring contract. Now, the only problem with that is you don't know if Coby starts off the year poorly. Say his value dips, and there really isn't a trade market for him based on what other teams are doing. But the positives is that you also don't know how desperate some teams are going to be come the trade deadline that maybe don't have the same sense of urgency this summer going into the season. Because all contending teams before the start of the year, they believe they're in great shape to contend. Everyone's starting 0-0. It's not until we're a couple of months into the season where a team that had maybe higher expectations and is falling well short of those says, all right, we need a guy. We need a scoring spark. We need a player that is going to give us a chance in the playoffs. And said team may be willing to offer more than what they originally would have for a player like Coby White, who could be a very capable third or fourth scoring option that can get hot from behind the arc. So in my view, I think it would be a mistake on the Bulls' part to trade Coby this summer. One, because I think the Bulls owe it to themselves to see if what we saw at the end of last season was real and truly something they can build with. But two, I think you're more likely than not going to be able to get more for Coby near the trade deadline just by virtue of teams being more desperate to make all-in type moves to get them over the hump. Not saying there aren't risks to waiting, like I just called out, especially if Coby struggles, but I believe the benefits to waiting outweigh the risks just based on the landscape of the league and what we know about Coby and his production and the value that he would have on the trade market. What the Bulls will do, though, I have no idea. They'll probably do the opposite of what I'd like to see. They'll either trade him on draft night for a low return, or they'll keep him and extend him in 2026 to a big deal that they lock up a good amount of their cap sheet between Josh Giddey and Coby White. But anyway, I would love to hear what you guys think. You guys let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.